My stepmom drained my trust fund, saying it was for my own good. The email notification made my stomach drop before I even opened it. Your Wells Fargo trust account balance is now $347.82. I stared at my laptop screen in my cramped dorm room, certain there had to be some mistake. 4 months ago, when I'd checked before spring semester, there was still $23,000 left. Enough to cover my senior year without drowning in more debt. My hands trembled as I logged into the full account dashboard, scrolling through months of withdrawal authorizations I'd never seen before. $2,400 to Nordstrom. $1,800 to some spa in Beverly Hills. $3,200 to a jewelry store I'd never heard of. $5,500 to something called Mediterranean Cruise Lines. Every single withdrawal was authorized by Diane Matthews, my stepmother of 4 years and a secondary account holder my dad had insisted on adding for emergencies. The emergency, apparently, was that Diane needed a new Chanel bag. I screenshot everything, my marketing professor's voice droning in the background of the Zoom lecture I'd completely stopped paying attention to. 4 years. 4 years of her telling me the trust fund distributions had been reduced for tax purposes while I worked double shifts at the campus bookstore and took out loan after loan. 4 years of her sighing dramatically about how money spoils young people while she wore new designer outfits to every family dinner. The worst part? I'd actually believed her. Sarah, you don't want to be one of those entitled trust fund kids, she'd said during my freshman year, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her wine glass. Your father, and I think it's better if you learn the value of hard work first. Character building. Character building. I built character working 40 hours a week while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I built character eating ramen noodles for weeks while she posted Instagram stories from 5-star restaurants. I built so much goddamn character that I was on track to graduate with $85,000 in student debt despite having a trust fund that was supposed to prevent exactly that. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, * Diane's planning something special for my 50th next month. Hope you can make it home, *. I grabbed my laptop and headed straight for the library, my flip-flops slapping against the pavement. Something special. Of course she was. Probably another party funded by what was left of my future. But as I settled into a corner corral and began systematically documenting every fraudulent transaction, I realized Diane was right about one thing: she had taught me about character. She'd taught me that some people would smile to your face while robbing you blind. She'd taught me that trust, once broken, transforms into something much more dangerous. She'd also taught me, without meaning to, exactly how to plan the perfect takedown. By the time I left the library 6 hours later, I had 4 years of financial records organized by date, screenshots of every transaction, and the phone number for both a lawyer and a forensic accountant. Diane wanted to throw Dad a special party? Perfect. I'd make sure it was one nobody would ever forget. The consultation with attorney Margaret Chin cost me $200 I couldn't afford, but her words were worth every penny of ramen noodles I'd be eating for the next month. This is textbook financial abuse and breach of fiduciary duty, she said, reviewing my meticulously organized evidence across her mahogany desk. The trust explicitly states distributions are for your education and living expenses, not luxury purchases. Do you have documentation of your actual financial situation during this period? I slid across 3 manila folders I'd spent the weekend preparing. Bank statements showing overdraft fees. Student loan documents totaling $85,000. My work schedules from the bookstore and the tutoring center. Even receipts from the plasma donation center. Her eyebrows shot up. You were selling plasma while she was taking Mediterranean cruises with your money? Twice a week junior year. $50 each time. The memory still made my arm ache. She told my dad I was building independence by working so much. Margaret flipped through bank statements, her expression growing grimmer. Sarah, this isn't just theft. It's sophisticated financial manipulation. Look at the timing, she made the largest withdrawals right after your tuition payments were due each semester. She knew exactly when you'd be most vulnerable. I hadn't noticed that pattern before. January 2020, $8,000 tuition payment, followed by Diane's $6,200 spa retreat 3 days later. August 2021, $8,500 tuition, followed by her $4,800 jewelry shopping spree. Every semester, like clockwork. There's something else, I said, pulling out my phone. I found her Instagram from 2019. Look at this post from Cabo. The photo showed Diane in a designer bikini, champagne flute raised toward a sunset. The caption read, * sometimes you have to invest in experiences. #blessed, #trust the process, #living my best life, *. Margaret's jaw tightened. She used # trust the process while stealing from your trust fund. The audacity is almost impressive. Can we get the money back? Criminally? Absolutely. This is grand theft, and the paper trail is ironclad. Civil recovery will depend on what assets she has, but... Margaret paused, studying me carefully. You mentioned your father's birthday party. Are you thinking of confronting her publicly? The thought crossed my mind. I have to advise you that any public confrontation could potentially complicate criminal proceedings. However, she leaned forward, if you happen to have witnesses present when you showed your father the evidence privately, and if they happen to overhear. Well, that's just unfortunate timing. I left her office with a clear legal strategy and a timeline: file criminal charges the Monday after Dad's party, initiate civil proceedings the following week. Margaret would have everything prepared, waiting only for my signature. But first, I had a party to plan. That evening, I called Dad from my dorm room, pacing the small space between my bed and desk. Sarah. Perfect timing. Diane just booked the country club for my party. She's going all out, says she wants to invite everyone we know. Everyone? The whole firm, neighbors, your grandparents, college friends, even some clients. She says I deserve a celebration to remember. Dad's voice carried that same proud warmth he always got when talking about Diane's thoughtfulness. My stomach twisted. A celebration funded by my stolen money, attended by everyone who mattered to him. Diane wasn't just throwing a party, she was orchestrating her own public relations masterpiece. Dad, can I ask you something? Do you ever check the trust account statements? Why would I? Diane handles all that financial stuff. She's much better with details than I am. Perfect. She'd isolated him from the evidence completely. I can't wait for the party, I told him, and for the first time in 4 years, I meant it. The next morning, I called in sick to my shift at the campus bookstore and drove the 4 hours home to Phoenix. I told myself it was just reconnaissance. I needed to understand the full scope of what Diane had done before the party. But really, I needed to see her house with fresh eyes. Dad wasn't home when I arrived, still at the law firm where he'd been a partner for 15 years. Diane answered the door in yoga pants that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, her face lighting up in that practiced smile I now recognized as performance art. Sarah. What a wonderful surprise. I was just heading to my Pilates class. New car? I asked, nodding toward the white BMW X5 in the driveway that definitely hadn't been there at Christmas. Oh, that old thing? Early birthday gift from your father. He's so generous. She touched the pearl necklace at her throat, also new. Come in, come in. I'll make us some tea. I followed her into the kitchen she'd renovated 2 years ago. Marble countertops, custom cabinets, professional-grade appliances that gleamed under pendant lighting. At the time, Dad had mentioned it cost $80,000. Looking at my bank records now, I could see exactly when that money had been withdrawn from my trust. $15,000 in March, $22,000 in April, $18,000 in May, $25,000 in June. Spread out just enough to avoid triggering any automatic alerts. So how's your last semester going? Still working at that little bookstore? Diane's voice carried just enough condescension to sting. Still working. Still building character, like you always say. It's so important for young people to understand the value of money. I see these wealthy kids who've never worked a day in their lives, they're completely helpless. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like party planning notes. Speaking of which, I'm organizing the most amazing celebration for your father. The country club, full catering, live music. He deserves something special. Must be expensive. Worth every penny. Your father works so hard, sometimes I think he forgets to enjoy the fruits of his labor. She paused, giving me a meaningful look. That's why I handle our finances. Men can be so impractical about these things. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and said, the house looks amazing. All these upgrades over the years. Thank you. I have an eye for investment pieces. That sculpture in the living room? It's already appreciated 30% since I bought it. Investment pieces. I excused myself to use the bathroom and detoured through the living room, checking the price tag still discreetly attached to the base of her investment sculpture, $12,000. I pulled up my bank records on my phone and found it, March 15th, $12,000 withdrawal for educational materials. Educational materials. She wasn't even trying to make the descriptions believable. When I returned to the kitchen, Diane was on the phone with someone about flowers for the party. No, the orchids have to be perfect. This is a milestone celebration. Yes, budget isn't a concern. Budget isn't a concern. With my money. I should get going, I said when she hung up. Long drive back to school. Of course, sweetie. Don't work too hard. She walked me to the door, then paused. Oh, and Sarah? For the party, maybe dress shopping this weekend? I'd hate for you to feel underdressed. I could send you some money for something nice. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd stolen $180,000 from me and was now offering to fund my outfit to watch her celebrate with the proceeds. That's so thoughtful, I managed. But I think I have something that'll work perfectly. During the drive back to campus, my phone rang. Margaret Chin. Sarah, we have a problem. I did some preliminary asset searches on Diane Matthews. The house is in your father's name, but she's moved significant money into accounts we can't touch, offshore investments, cryptocurrency, some LLC registered in Delaware. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. How much? Hard to say without a full forensic audit, but she's not stupid. She's been laundering your trust fund money into protected assets for years. So even if we prove she stole it, we might not be able to recover it all. Sarah, this woman is more sophisticated than we thought. She's not just an opportunistic thief, she's been running a long-term financial scheme. I pulled over at a gas station, hands shaking. Diane hadn't just stolen my money. She'd systematically dismantled my future while building herself an escape plan. But she'd made one crucial mistake, she was throwing her victory party before the game was over. The private investigator cost me another $300 I couldn't afford, but Jake Morrison came highly recommended by Margaret's office. We met at a coffee shop near campus, and I slid him a manila folder containing everything I'd compiled on Diane. I need to know what else she's hiding before I move forward, I told him. My lawyer thinks she's been planning this for years. Jake was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much human ugliness. He flipped through my documentation, occasionally whistling under his breath. Jesus. She really went to town, didn't she? He paused at a screenshot of her Instagram. This woman documented her own crimes on social media. Look at this, she posted from that Cabo trip with the caption "New adventures require new investments" right after withdrawing $8,000 from your account. Can you trace where the money went after she moved it? Maybe. These offshore accounts aren't as untouchable as people think, especially if we can prove the funds were obtained illegally. He closed the folder. But I'm going to need more than bank records. I need to get inside her digital life, emails, cloud storage, financial apps. The real evidence is probably buried in communications with her financial advisor or accountant. How do we get that? Jake gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Leave that to me. But Sarah, once we go down this road, there's no coming back. If she's as calculating as she appears, she's not going to just roll over when cornered. Are you prepared for this to get ugly? 3 days later, Jake called with results that made my blood run cold. You're going to want to sit down for this, he said. I managed to access some of Diane's cloud storage through a security vulnerability. She's got files going back to before she even married your father. I was in the library, and I gripped my phone tighter. What kind of files? Financial records, for starters. But also research files on your family. She did deep background checks on your father's assets before they got married. Property values, business partnerships, your trust fund details, stuff most people wouldn't even know to look for. My mouth went dry. She targeted him? It gets worse. She's got email exchanges with someone named Marcus Webb. Turns out he's a financial consultant who specializes in asset optimization for blended families. They've been corresponding for 3 years about the best ways to move money without triggering fraud investigations. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. She planned this whole thing. Sarah, there's more. I found a draft email from last month that she never sent. It's addressed to your father. Jake paused. She was planning to tell him you'd been stealing from your own trust fund. The library spun around me. What? She created fake documentation showing withdrawals that coincided with your tuition payments, made it look like you were taking extra money for lifestyle expenses. The email talks about how concerned she was about your spending habits, how she'd been trying to protect the family from your financial irresponsibility. There are even fake receipts for luxury purchases supposedly made by you. I couldn't breathe. She hadn't just stolen from me, she'd been preparing to destroy my relationship with my father by framing me for her own crimes. Why didn't she send it? Timeline suggests she's waiting until after his birthday party. My guess? She wanted one last big celebration before burning everything down. That night, I called Dad under the pretense of checking on party details. His voice was strained, distracted. Everything okay? I asked. Just work stress. And honestly, Diane's been acting strange lately. Secretive phone calls, weird mood swings. I caught her crying yesterday, but when I asked what was wrong, she just said she was worried about family finances. My heart hammered. She was already laying the groundwork, preparing him for the bombshell she planned to drop after his party. Dad, has Diane ever mentioned anything about my spending habits? Any concerns about money? A long pause. Actually, she did bring up something recently. Said she'd noticed some irregularities in your trust fund statements, but she wanted to wait until after the party to discuss it. Didn't want to worry me during celebration planning. I forced my voice to stay steady. What kind of irregularities? She wasn't specific. Just said she was concerned about some withdrawals that didn't seem to match your tuition schedule. His voice softened. Sarah, you'd tell me if you were having financial problems, right? I know college is expensive, but if you needed more help. Of course, Dad. We'll talk soon. After hanging up, I sat in my empty dorm room staring at the wall. Diane's plan was flawless, steal everything, throw herself a victory party with the proceeds, then frame me for the theft and disappear with her offshore accounts intact. By the time anyone realized what had really happened, she'd be gone and I'd be left holding the blame for my own financial destruction. But she'd made one fatal miscalculation. She thought I was still the naive teenager who believed her lies about character building. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Jake Morrison. If Diane wanted to play chess with my future, fine. It was time to show her I'd learned a few moves of my own. Jake's follow-up call came at 2 a.m., waking me from the first decent sleep I'd managed in weeks. Sarah, we've got a problem. A big one. His voice was tight with urgency. I kept digging through Diane's files, and she's not working alone. This Marcus Webb guy? He's connected to at least 4 other cases of trust fund fraud across Arizona and California. They're running a whole operation. I sat up in my narrow dorm bed, suddenly wide awake. What do you mean, operation? Wealthy widowers and divorcees with kids from previous marriages. Webb identifies the targets, provides financial strategies, even coaches the women on manipulation techniques. I found training documents, Sarah. Actual PDFs titled Building Trust While Accessing Assets and Emotional Manipulation in Blended Family Dynamics. My stomach lurched. Everything, her concerned looks when discussing my character development, the way she positioned herself as the responsible financial guardian, even her tears about family finances, it was all scripted. There's more, Jake continued. Webb and Diane have been planning her exit strategy for months. She's got a new identity prepared, bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, even a rental property lined up in Costa Rica. She's planning to disappear right after she frames you. When? Based on her correspondence with Webb, she's accelerating the timeline. Originally planned for next fall, but something spooked her. She's now targeting 2 weeks after your dad's party. I pressed my free hand against my forehead, trying to process the magnitude of what I was hearing. She's done this before? Webb's other clients have stolen over $2 million combined. But here's the thing, none of the previous victims ever saw criminal charges stick. These women are ghosts by the time law enforcement gets involved, and Webb's operation is sophisticated enough to muddy the financial trail. The room felt like it was closing in. Margaret Chen had warned me that public confrontation could complicate criminal proceedings, but what was the point of proper legal channels if Diane would vanish before facing consequences? Jake, I need copies of everything you found. All of it. Already encrypted and uploaded to a secure server. But Sarah, he paused, and I could hear him typing in the background. There's something else in her recent emails. She's been researching you too. Deep background checks, social media monitoring, even academic records. She knows about your marketing degree, your internship applications, everything. Why would she? Then it hit me. She's anticipating retaliation. More than that. I found a draft email to Webb from yesterday asking about neutralizing potential threats from target's children. She's not just planning to frame you for theft, she's preparing to destroy your credibility entirely. I thought about my job interviews lined up for after graduation, the marketing firms that had shown interest in my portfolio. If Diane successfully painted me as a trust fund thief who'd stolen from my own family, my career would be over before it started. How long do we have? Webb's flying to Phoenix this weekend. Based on their communication pattern, I guess they're meeting to finalize everything. Jake's voice turned grim. Sarah, these people are professionals. They perfected this scheme over years. If we don't move fast and smart, you're going to lose everything, your money, your relationship with your father, and your future. I looked at my calendar. Dad's party was in exactly 8 days. Jake, can you get me a complete dossier on Webb and his other victims by Friday? Names, dates, financial records, everything? Probably. Why? Because if Diane wants to throw a party to celebrate stealing my future, I'm going to make sure all her victims get invited to the celebration. The next morning, I skipped my first 2 classes and drove straight to Margaret Chen's office with a flash drive containing everything Jake had uncovered. She listened in stunned silence as I explained Webb's operation and Diane's accelerated timeline. This changes everything, Margaret said finally. This isn't just theft, it's organized crime. The FBI needs to be involved. How long would an FBI investigation take? Months. Maybe years. She saw my expression and shook her head. Sarah, I know what you're thinking, but vigilante justice isn't the answer. It's not vigilante justice. It's a family conversation that happens to have witnesses. Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying me. What exactly are you planning? I pulled out my phone and showed her the guest list Dad had sent me for his birthday party. 68 names, including his entire law firm, 3 judges, 2 city council members, and the head of the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce. Diane's right about one thing, I said. My father deserves a celebration he'll never forget. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source, my father's secretary. I called the law firm Thursday morning, planning to confirm Dad would be home that evening so I could drive down for what I was calling a pre-party visit. Instead, Linda Martinez, who'd been Dad's secretary for 12 years, answered with barely concealed panic in her voice. Sarah, thank God you called. I've been trying to reach your father all morning, but he's in depositions. She lowered her voice. That woman, your stepmother, she was here yesterday asking questions about your father's retirement accounts and life insurance policies. My blood went cold. What kind of questions? Beneficiary information, mostly. She claimed she was updating their estate planning, but she seemed most interested in accounts your father manages personally. The ones she doesn't have access to. Linda paused. Sarah, I've been working with attorneys for 15 years. I know the difference between legitimate planning and fishing expeditions. I pulled over in the campus parking lot, hands shaking. Did you give her anything? Of course not. But she left frustrated, and... Linda's voice dropped to almost a whisper. She made a comment about how family situations can change quickly and how she hoped your father's misplaced trust wouldn't cause problems for the firm. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Diane wasn't just planning to frame me for stealing from my trust fund, she was positioning herself to claim Dad was mentally unfit to manage his own finances. If she could convince people that his judgment was compromised by my supposed betrayal, she could potentially gain control of everything he'd worked for. Linda, this is going to sound strange, but I need you to document everything about yesterday's visit. Times, exact questions, even her mood. And if she comes back, I'll call security, Linda said firmly. Sarah, I don't know what's going on, but that woman gives me the creeps. Your father's a good man, he doesn't deserve whatever she's planning. After hanging up, I immediately called Jake. We need to move faster. She's not just targeting the trust fund anymore, she's going after everything. I was about to call you, Jake said grimly. Webb landed in Phoenix this morning, 3 days earlier than planned. And get this, I traced his hotel reservation. He's booked through next Thursday, checking out the day after your father's party. They're moving everything up. It gets worse. I intercepted an encrypted message between Webb and someone called Phoenix Asset Management. Turns out it's a shell company Diane set up 6 months ago. They're planning to transfer your father's business partnership shares into the shell company next week. I felt dizzy. Dad's law firm partnership was worth over $800,000. Combined with his other assets, Diane wasn't just stealing my future, she was planning to financially destroy my father completely. Jake, I need every detail of their plan. Meeting locations, transfer schedules, communication records, everything. Already working on it. But Sarah, there's something else. I found Webb's client notes from their call yesterday. Diane's getting nervous about you. She specifically asked about accelerated neutralization protocols if you became suspicious before they finished. What does that mean? In Webb's other cases, when family members got too close to the truth, they'd manufacture evidence of drug problems, mental health crises, even criminal activity. Whatever it took to destroy credibility. Jake's voice hardened. This woman isn't just a thief, Sarah. She's dangerous. I sat in my car, watching normal college students walk to their normal classes, living their normal lives. Meanwhile, I was discovering that my stepmother was part of an organized crime ring planning to destroy my entire family. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They thought I was just another naive victim who'd crumble under pressure. Instead, they'd given me exactly what I needed to destroy them. Jake, change of plans. I want Webb at that party. What? Can you make sure he gets an invitation? Something that looks like it came from Diane? Probably, but why would you? Because if they want to play with professionals, I said, starting my car, they're about to learn I'd become one too. The call from my bank came at the worst possible moment, right as I was sitting in advanced corporate strategy, trying to focus on anything other than the Webb situation. Miss Rodriguez, this is Janet from Wells Fargo Security. We've detected some unusual activity on your checking account and need to verify some recent transactions. I stepped out into the hallway, my heart already sinking. What kind of activity? 3 attempted withdrawals totaling $2,400 were made yesterday evening using your debit card information. The transactions were declined due to insufficient funds, but we're concerned about potential fraud. My hands went numb. Where were the attempts made? 2 ATM withdrawals in Phoenix, and 1 point-of-sale transaction at a jewelry store called Meridian Fine Jewels. She paused. Do you currently have your debit card in your possession? I checked my wallet with shaking fingers. My card was there, but that didn't matter. I haven't been to Phoenix in over a week. We'll need to cancel your current card immediately and issue a replacement. In the meantime, we strongly recommend reviewing all your financial accounts for suspicious activity. After hanging up, I immediately called Jake. They're escalating. Someone just tried to use my debit card information in Phoenix. Shit. That's not random. Meridian Fine Jewels is where Diane bought that $3,200 necklace last month using your trust fund money. They're creating a pattern to support their fraud narrative. The brilliance of it was sickening. Failed withdrawal attempts using my card at the same stores where Diane had actually spent my money. When she finally accused me of theft, the bank records would show my attempts to access funds at the exact locations where the fraudulent purchases occurred. Jake, please tell me you have something we can use against Webb. Actually, yes. I've been monitoring his communications since yesterday, and he made a critical error. He's been using the hotel's business center computer for some of his encrypted calls with Diane, probably thinking it was more secure than his phone. Hotel security cameras captured everything. Can you get the footage? Already did. Turns out the business center manager is an old army buddy of mine. We've got Webb on video during 3 separate calls where he's clearly coaching Diane on financial fraud techniques. There's even audio of him explaining how to backdate documents to make it look like you authorized the trust fund withdrawals. Finally, something that could work. Is it enough for criminal charges? It's enough to destroy their entire operation. But Sarah, we need to be smart about timing. If we move too early, they'll just disappear. If we wait too long, they might succeed in framing you first. I leaned against the hallway wall, watching students hurry between classes. Normal people with normal problems. What if we let them think they're winning? What do you mean? Webb and Diane are expecting me to either stay quiet or panic and make mistakes. What if instead, I give them exactly what they want to see? You're thinking like bait. I'm thinking like someone who spent 4 years studying consumer psychology and behavioral marketing. I started walking back toward my dorm, my mind racing. They need me to look guilty to make their framed job work. So let's give them a guilty-looking target while we document everything they do. Jake was quiet for a long moment. That's incredibly risky. If something goes wrong, you'll have helped them build their case against you. But if it works, we'll have video evidence of them actively framing an innocent person in real time. I thought about Linda's warning, about Webb's neutralization protocols, about my father's confused voice when he'd mentioned Diane's concerns about family finances. Jake, they're going to destroy my family either way. At least this gives us some control. What exactly are you proposing? I reached my dorm and unlocked the door, looking around at the cramped space that had been my sanctuary for 4 years. Soon, if Diane succeeded, I might lose even this. I'm going to call my dad and tell him I need to talk to him about some financial problems I've been having. Sarah. Don't worry, I said, pulling out my laptop and opening the secure folder containing all our evidence. I'm not actually confessing to anything. But if Diane and Webb think I'm about to crack under pressure, they might accelerate their timeline enough to make mistakes. Or they might just frame you faster. I looked at my calendar. Dad's party was in 4 days. Then we better make sure we're ready to catch them in the act. The phone call with Dad that evening nearly broke my resolve before I even started. Sarah, sweetheart, I'm so glad you called. Diane's been worried sick about you. His voice carried that familiar warmth, but underneath it was something new, uncertainty. She mentioned you might be going through some financial stress? I closed my eyes, hating what I was about to do. Dad, I think I might have made some mistakes with money management. I was hoping we could talk before your party. Of course. What kind of mistakes? The words felt like poison in my mouth. I've been taking more from the trust fund than I probably should have. For things beyond just tuition. I forced my voice to shake slightly. I'm scared I might have messed up the account balance. A long pause. In the background, I could hear Diane's voice, too muffled to make out words, but her tone was animated. Excited. How much are we talking about, honey? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe a lot? I manufactured a sob. I've been too afraid to look at the statements lately. Every time I try to check the balance, I just panic and close the browser. Oh, Sarah. Dad's voice was heavy with disappointment that cut deeper than any anger could have. Why didn't you come to us sooner? Because your wife has been systematically stealing from me for 4 years, I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, I was ashamed. I kept thinking I could fix it myself, maybe get a better job, pay some of it back. We'll figure this out, Dad said firmly. Can you drive down tomorrow? We should go through everything together, get a clear picture of the situation. Actually, Diane's voice came clearly through the phone now, apparently having moved closer. Maybe it would be better to wait until after the party. We don't want to spoil your celebration with family drama. My blood chilled. She was buying time, probably to coordinate with Webb on the final stages of their plan. No, Dad said, and I could hear the attorney in his voice. This is more important than any party. Sarah, come home tomorrow. We'll spend the weekend going through all the financial records. After hanging up, I immediately called Jake. They took the bait. Diane sounded practically giddy when I admitted to financial mistakes. I heard, Jake said grimly. I've been monitoring their communications. Webb got a text from Diane 30 seconds after your call ended. Just said package delivered early. Adjust timeline. What does that mean? Based on their previous messages, I think they're moving up their evidence planting. Instead of waiting until after the party to accuse you, they might spring their trap this weekend while you're there. I felt sick. In front of my dad? It would be perfect timing from their perspective. You've just confessed to financial problems, you're emotionally vulnerable, and your father's already disappointed. If they present their fabricated evidence now, it'll look like a devastated parent discovering the full scope of his daughter's betrayal. I sat down heavily on my dorm bed. Jake, what if I'm wrong about this? What if I can't prove they planted evidence? My dad will never forgive me. Sarah, listen to me. I've been tracking Webb's digital footprint all day, and I found something huge. He's been corresponding with a document forger in Tucson. They've created fake bank statements, fake receipts, even fake email exchanges between you and various luxury retailers. How fake do they look? Professional grade. If I didn't know they were manufactured, I'd probably believe them myself. Jake paused. But here's the thing, the forger made one critical error. All the documents have embedded metadata showing they were created this week, not spread out over 4 years like they're supposed to represent. Is that enough to prove fraud? In court, absolutely. But convincing your father in the moment? That's going to be much harder. Jake's voice softened. Sarah, there's still time to back out. We could take everything we have to the FBI right now. I thought about Linda's warning, about Dad's confusion over Diane's recent behavior, about the 4 years I'd spent believing I was learning character while being systematically robbed. No. If we involve the FBI now, it'll take months to build a case, and by then Webb and Diane will be long gone. This is our only chance to catch them in the act. Then we need insurance, Jake said. I'm driving to Phoenix tonight. I'll be monitoring everything from a van outside your father's house. The moment things go sideways, I can intervene with evidence. What kind of evidence? The kind that turns their ambush into our trap. I could hear him typing rapidly. Sarah, how do you feel about wearing a wire? The next morning, I stood in my childhood bedroom, staring at the tiny recording device Jake had taped between my shoulder blades. The wire was nearly invisible, running up under my hair to a transmitter that looked like a small hearing aid. Testing, I whispered, and Jake's voice crackled softly in my earpiece. Crystal clear. Remember, the goal is to get them to explain their fabricated evidence in detail. The more they talk about dates and amounts, the easier it'll be to prove the documents were manufactured. Through my bedroom window, I could see Diane in the backyard, pacing while talking animatedly on her phone. Probably coordinating final details with Webb. Jake, what if she spots the wire? She won't. But Sarah, if at any point this feels too dangerous, just say the word grandmother and I'll call and back up immediately. Dad's voice echoed up the stairs. Sarah? Can you come down to the office? We should start going through those account statements. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. 4 years ago, I would have been terrified of disappointing my father. Now, I was about to risk everything on the hope that he'd believe his daughter over the woman who'd been manipulating both of us. See you on the other side, I whispered to Jake. Time to find out if my stepmother was as smart as she thought she was. Dad's home office felt smaller than I remembered, the mahogany desk that had once seemed imposing now just looking tired under the afternoon light. He'd spread out printed bank statements across the surface, documents I immediately recognized as fake from the crisp white paper and perfectly aligned text that screamed freshly printed. I had Diane pull all the trust fund statements from the past 2 years, Dad said, his voice carefully neutral in that way he used with difficult clients. Sarah, some of these transactions, they're concerning. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk, the wire between my shoulder blades feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What do you mean? Diane appeared in the doorway as if summoned, carrying a steaming mug of coffee and wearing an expression of practiced concern. I didn't want to worry your father before his birthday, but... She set down the mug and moved to stand behind his chair, one manicured hand resting on his shoulder. Sarah, honey, we found some irregularities. Like what? I forced confusion into my voice while Jake's whispered perfect crackled in my earpiece. Dad lifted a bank statement dated March 2022. This shows a $4,200 withdrawal for educational expenses, but your tuition was already paid that semester. When I called the bursar's office, they confirmed you were current on all fees. I leaned forward to examine the document, noting the way the dates seemed slightly off-center and the font didn't quite match legitimate Wells Fargo statements I'd seen. I'm not sure. Maybe it was for books. Or my laptop died around then? A $4,200 laptop? Diane's voice carried just the right amount of disappointed disbelief. Sarah, we're not angry, but we need honesty here. Dad pulled out another statement. Then there's this, $3,800 to something called Luxury Student Living Solutions in April. But you were in the dorms all of junior year. My stomach clenched as I recognized the amount and date. That was exactly when Diane had booked her spa weekend in Scottsdale, right down to the dollar amount I'd documented in my evidence files. I don't remember that, I said weakly. The thing is, Diane continued, moving around the desk to sit on its edge, when these larger withdrawals started happening, I did some checking. That company, Luxury Student Living? It doesn't exist, sweetie. The address traces back to a UPS store in Tempe. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd literally used the same amount she'd stolen, then created fake companies to make it look like I'd been the one misusing funds. Jake's voice whispered urgently in my ear, she's giving you everything. Keep her talking about specifics. Maybe there was some kind of mistake with the bank? I suggested. Dad shook his head, pulling out more documents. I thought so too, initially. But look at this pattern. He spread out 6 months of statements, each showing suspicious withdrawals that perfectly coincided with Diane's actual spending sprees. Sarah, this is $23,000 in questionable transactions just from last semester. The timing is what concerns me most, Diane added, her voice heavy with fake maternal disappointment. Every single irregular withdrawal happened within days of your tuition payments. It's like... She paused dramatically, like someone was taking advantage of the account activity to hide additional spending. Someone? I asked. Diane exchanged a meaningful look with Dad. Honey, the account access logs show these transactions were authorized using your login credentials, during times when you would have been checking your balance for legitimate school expenses. I felt genuinely impressed despite my revulsion. They thought through every detail, created a narrative that painted me as not just a thief, but a calculating one who deliberately timed my fraud to avoid detection. But I would never. I let my voice trail off, as if the weight of evidence was crushing my protests. Dad leaned back in his chair, looking older than his 50 years. Sarah, I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you been taking money from the trust fund for things other than school? Through the window, I caught a glimpse of a white van parked across the street. Jake, recording everything. It was time to spring our trap. Dad, I need to tell you something, I said, my voice barely steady. But first, can you show me the original bank statements? The ones that came directly from Wells Fargo, not printed copies? Diane's hand tightened on Dad's shoulder. These are the originals, sweetie. I pulled them straight from the online portal this morning. Then you won't mind if we log in together and check the timestamps? I pulled out my phone. Because I've been tracking every transaction in my trust fund for the past 6 months, and these numbers don't match what I recorded. Dad frowned. You've been tracking them? But you just said you were too scared to look at the statements. My heart hammered, but Jake's voice whispered encouragement in my ear, perfect setup. Go for it. I lied about being scared to look, I said. Dad, I've been investigating fraud in my trust fund since January. Someone has been systematically stealing from me for 4 years, and I have proof. Diane's face went perfectly blank, a reaction more telling than any emotional outburst. Sarah, honey, you're clearly confused. The stress of academic pressure can sometimes cause. Diane, what was the weather like in Cabo in March 2021? I interrupted. She blinked. What does that have to do with? Because according to your Instagram, you had a wonderful time at the beach resort there. The same week that $6,200 was withdrawn from my trust fund for your trip. I stood up, pulling out my phone. Dad, I need you to see something. Sarah, you're being ridiculous, Diane said, but her voice had lost its motherly warmth. Your father and I have never been to Cabo. I opened my photo gallery and handed Dad my phone, showing Diane's Instagram post from the Cabo trip. The timestamp clearly showed March 2021, and her geotag confirmed the location. Dad stared at the screen, then at Diane. You told me you were visiting your sister in Denver that week. I can explain, Diane started. Actually, let me explain, I said, pulling out the manila folder I'd prepared. Diane, you've been stealing from my trust fund for 4 years. You've taken $179,653 to fund vacations, shopping sprees, jewelry, and home renovations. You told me the distributions were reduced for tax purposes while I took out $85,000 in student loans and sold plasma to buy groceries. Diane's composure cracked slightly. Robert, she's having some kind of breakdown. This is exactly the kind of erratic behavior I was worried about. Then explain this. I pulled out a printed screenshot of her text message to someone named Marcus from yesterday. Target confirmed guilty narrative. Ready for document presentation. Transfer offshore accounts Monday as planned. Dad's face went white. Diane, what offshore accounts? I don't know what she's talking about, Diane said, but she was backing toward the door. Robert, I think we need to call someone. A counselor, maybe a doctor. Sarah is clearly having a psychotic episode. The only psychotic thing here is your plan, I said. Dad, Diane's been working with a financial consultant named Marcus Webb who specializes in trust fund fraud. They've stolen from at least 4 other families using the exact same techniques. That's impossible, Dad said, but his voice was uncertain. Jake's voice crackled in my ear. Webb just pulled up outside. Black sedan, getting out now. Through the window, I saw a tall man in an expensive suit walking toward our front door. Perfect timing, they'd planned this confrontation down to the minute. Actually, you can ask him yourself, I said as the doorbell rang. That'll be Marcus Webb, coming to help Diane convince you that I'm mentally unstable and that she needs power of attorney to protect the family assets. Diane's face went completely pale. How could you possibly know? She stopped herself, but it was too late. Dad was staring at her with dawning comprehension. Because unlike you, I said, I actually am good at financial investigation. The doorbell rang again, and Diane looked trapped. Time to finish what she'd started. Dad moved toward the front door, but I caught his arm. Wait. Before you answer that, I need you to see one more thing. I pulled out my laptop and opened the secure folder Jake had helped me compile. Diane, you made one critical mistake in your fake bank statements. You used the same withdrawal amounts and dates as your real purchases, just attributed them to fake companies. This is insane, Diane said, but her voice was shaking now. Robert, don't listen to her. She's been planning this elaborate story to cover up her own theft. Then explain this. I clicked on a video file that filled the screen, hotel security footage of Marcus Webb in the business center, clearly visible as he coached someone through financial fraud techniques over a video call. The timestamp showed yesterday, 3:47 p.m. Dad leaned closer to the screen, his face grave. Who is this man? Marcus Webb, financial consultant specializing in what he calls asset optimization for blended families. He's been teaching Diane how to steal from trust funds without getting caught. I paused the video at a frame showing Webb's face clearly. The same man who's currently standing at our front door. The doorbell chimed a third time, followed by an impatient knock. Diane was backing toward the office's side door, her carefully constructed mask finally slipping completely. Robert, I can explain everything, but not like this. Not with her spinning lies and... Stop. Dad's voice carried the authority I remembered from my childhood, the tone that meant no arguments. Just stop talking, Diane. He turned to me, his eyes reflecting a mixture of confusion and dawning anger. Sarah, if what you're showing me is true. It's all true. Every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. I opened another file. She even researched you before you started dating. Financial background checks, asset valuations, information about Mom's life insurance policy that established my trust fund. Dad sank back into his chair as I showed him Webb's client files, including detailed dossiers on our family's finances dating back to before his first date with Diane. She didn't fall in love with you, Dad. She targeted you. That's not true, Diane said desperately. I love your father. This is all just a business transaction? I pulled up an email exchange between Diane and Webb from last month. Quote, subject shows stronger emotional attachment than anticipated. May complicate extraction timeline but increases asset accessibility. End quote. Dad read the email twice, his face hardening with each word. Outside, we could hear footsteps pacing on the front porch. Webb was getting impatient. There's more, I continued. She's been moving your money too, Dad. Shell companies, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency investments you never authorized. She was planning to disappear after framing me for her crimes and convincing everyone you were mentally incompetent. I showed him the documents Jake had uncovered, partnership shares being transferred, retirement accounts being redirected, even paperwork suggesting Dad had early onset dementia and needed financial supervision. My God, Dad whispered, staring at forged medical evaluations with his name on them. Diane, how could you? But when we looked up, Diane was gone. The side door stood open, and we could hear her car starting in the garage. Jake's voice crackled urgently in my earpiece. She's running. Webb's moving to intercept her. I'm calling in backup now. Dad was still staring at the laptop screen in shock. Sarah, I don't understand how I didn't see this. Because she's a professional, Dad. This is what she does. I closed the laptop and took his hand. But we caught her. And now we're going to make sure she never does this to anyone else. Through the window, we watched Webb sprint toward his car as Diane's BMW squealed out of the driveway. But they were too late. Jake's van was already blocking the street, and I could hear sirens approaching from multiple directions. The chaos that followed felt like watching a movie in slow motion. Through Dad's office window, we saw Webb's black sedan swerve around Jake's van, clipping the mailbox of the house across the street before speeding toward the main road. But Phoenix PD had anticipated this. 2 patrol cars were already positioned at the intersection, lights flashing. Sarah, how long have you been planning this? Dad asked, his voice hollow as we watched Webb's car get boxed in by police cruisers. Since I found out 3 weeks ago that I had $347 left in my trust fund. I pulled out my earpiece, Jake's voice still crackling with updates about roadblocks and arrests. Dad, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner, but I needed proof they'd accept in court. Dad stood up slowly, moving to the window as officers approached Webb's vehicle with weapons drawn. She's really gone, isn't she? For years of marriage, and I never knew her at all. The sound of squealing tires made us both turn toward the back of the house. Diane's BMW was racing through the alley behind our property, but she'd made a critical error. Our neighborhood only had one way out, and she was heading straight toward another police barricade. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, both suspects in custody. FBI en route to process crime scene. You did it. I felt like I should be celebrating, but looking at Dad's devastated expression, all I felt was exhausted. I know this is a lot to process, I said carefully. A lot to process? Dad laughed bitterly. My wife of 4 years is a con artist who stole my daughter's college fund while I praised her for teaching you responsibility. Sarah, I've been an attorney for 20 years. How did I not see this? Before I could answer, there was a firm knock at the front door. This time it wasn't Webb, it was Detective Lisa Rodriguez from the Phoenix PD Financial Crimes Unit, badge visible through the door's glass panel. Mr. Matthews? I'm Detective Rodriguez. We need to speak with you and your daughter about the suspects we just arrested. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of official statements, evidence cataloging, and explanations that grew more surreal with each retelling. Detective Rodriguez, a sharp woman in her 40s, seemed genuinely impressed by the thoroughness of our documentation. In 15 years of financial fraud cases, I've never seen victims compile evidence this comprehensive, she told us, reviewing the files Jake and I had prepared. The video footage of Webb coaching fraud techniques, the metadata analysis of forged documents, even the correlation between social media posts and stolen funds, this is textbook preparation. Dad sat beside me on the living room couch, still processing everything. Detective, what kind of charges are we looking at? For Webb? Organized fraud, identity theft, money laundering across state lines, he's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. We've already contacted his other victims in California and Nevada. She turned to me. Sarah, your stepmother is facing similar charges, plus breach of fiduciary duty and elder abuse for targeting your father. Elder abuse? Dad protested. I'm 50 years old. Sir, she documented plans to have you declared mentally incompetent. In Arizona, that qualifies as elder financial abuse regardless of age. Detective Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. Mr. Matthews, you should know that Webb's organization has been on our radar for months. Your daughter's evidence is going to help us shut down an operation that's stolen over $3 million from families across the Southwest. My phone rang, Margaret Chen, my attorney. Sarah, I just heard from the prosecutor's office. With Webb and Diane in custody and your evidence package, they're confident about full restitution. You should have your money back within 90 days. After hanging up, I looked at Dad, who was staring at his hands. I keep thinking about all the times she talked about your character development, he said quietly. All those lectures about spoiled rich kids while she was buying $1,000 purses with your college money. Dad, this isn't your fault. Isn't it? I added her to your trust fund. I believed every lie she told about your spending habits. Hell, I was proud of her for being such a responsible financial guardian. He looked up at me, eyes red with exhaustion. Sarah, can you ever forgive me? I thought about the 4 years of ramen noodles and plasma donations, the sleepless nights worrying about loan payments, the humiliation of having my card declined at grocery stores while Diane posted vacation photos. But I also thought about the man who'd worked 16-hour days to build a law practice that could provide for his family, who'd loved someone completely only to discover she'd been manipulating him from day one. There's nothing to forgive, I said, taking his hand. We were both victims. Detective Rodriguez closed her notebook and stood up. We'll need formal statements from both of you tomorrow, but for now, try to get some rest. It's over. As she left, Dad and I sat in silence, watching the crime scene team finish processing Diane's abandoned BMW in our driveway. So, Dad said eventually, I suppose we should cancel the birthday party. I looked at him, thinking about the guest list of 68 people who'd been expecting a celebration in 3 days. Actually, I said, I think we should have it anyway. You deserve to celebrate surviving this nightmare. Dad managed a weak smile. What would we tell people? I thought about Webb and Diane sitting in jail cells, about the other families they destroyed, about the justice that was finally coming. We tell them the truth. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is freedom from the people trying to destroy them. The aftermath should have felt like victory, but sitting in Dad's living room the next morning, watching crime scene tape flutter in our front yard, I mostly felt hollow. Dad had barely slept. I could hear him pacing the hallway until 3 a.m., probably replaying 4 years of memories through the lens of Diane's deception. Coffee, he offered, standing in the kitchen doorway in yesterday's clothes. Thanks. I accepted the mug, noting how his hands shook slightly. Dad, Detective Rodriguez said we could postpone the formal statements if you need more time. No, I want this finished. He sat across from me, looking older than his 50 years. Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have mentioned yesterday. My stomach clenched. After everything we'd uncovered, what could possibly be left? 2 weeks ago, Diane asked me to update my will. Dad's voice was carefully controlled. She said it was just routine estate planning, making sure everything was properly structured after 4 years of marriage. What kind of updates? She wanted to be designated as executor instead of you. Said it would be less burden on a young person if something happened to me. Dad met my eyes. I signed the papers, Sarah. Last Friday. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Dad, if you died before we exposed her, she would have controlled everything. My life insurance, the law firm partnership, your trust fund, even your inheritance from your mother. He rubbed his face with both hands. She was positioning herself to steal not just from you, but from your entire future. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, emergency. Need to meet ASAP. Found something in Webb's files. Dad, I have to go meet with the investigator. Can you handle giving your statement alone this afternoon? Actually, I was thinking of bringing someone with me. He pulled out his phone. Linda Martinez offered to come as a witness. She documented everything about Diane's visits to the office, including recordings of their conversations. Recordings? Apparently Linda's been suspicious of Diane for months. Started recording their interactions after Diane made some inappropriate comments about my declining judgment. Dad's expression hardened. Linda heard Diane tell someone on the phone that older attorneys often develop concerning decision-making patterns that require family intervention. The scope of Diane's manipulation kept expanding. She hadn't just been stealing, she'd been systematically undermining Dad's professional reputation to justify taking control of his assets. I met Jake at a coffee shop near ASU, finding him hunched over a laptop with dark circles under his eyes. Tell me you slept, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. 3 hours. Sarah, Webb's been talking, trying to negotiate a plea deal. He gave up information about their entire operation. Jake turned the laptop screen toward me. They've been running this scam for 7 years. 12 families, over $4 million stolen. The screen showed a spreadsheet with victim profiles, wealthy widowers and divorcees, all with children from previous marriages, all systematically targeted and financially destroyed. But here's the problem, Jake continued. Webb's claiming Diane went rogue on your case. Says she was supposed to limit the theft to $50,000 maximum, but she got greedy and took everything. What does that mean for prosecution? Webb's trying to paint himself as the mastermind and Diane as an out-of-control accomplice. If it works, he gets a reduced sentence while she takes full responsibility for the worst of the crimes. I stared at the victim list, recognizing the pattern now. All the families had been completely destroyed, parents and children turned against each other, life savings evaporated. How many of these families recovered their money? Jake's expression answered before he spoke. None of them. Webb and his associates were too good at moving assets offshore. Your case is the first time they were caught in the act with evidence this comprehensive. So if Webb gets his plea deal, he serves maybe 5 years and keeps the locations of millions in stolen assets. Meanwhile, Diane becomes the scapegoat for the entire operation. Jake leaned forward. Sarah, there's something else. Webb mentioned that Diane has been planning to fake her own death. My blood went cold. What? She's got a false identity prepared, complete with death certificate templates. The plan was to die in a car accident after framing you, leaving your father as a grieving widower who'd never suspect his deceased wife had robbed him blind. I thought about Dad shaking hands this morning, about how devastated he'd been just learning about the financial theft. If Diane had succeeded in faking her death after destroying our relationship. Jake, we can't let Webb minimize this. Those other families deserve justice too. Agreed. But Webb's information could be our only way to recover the other victims' money. He pulled up another file. However, I think I found something that might change the game entirely. The screen filled with bank records showing a pattern I hadn't seen before, regular transfers between Webb's accounts and something called Phoenix Estate Solutions. What is Phoenix Estate Solutions? That's what I spent all night figuring out. Jake's tired eyes gleamed with satisfaction. It's not just a shell company Webb created for your stepmother. It's been operating for 3 years, handling estate planning for dozens of wealthy Arizona families. The implication hit me like a physical blow. They're not just stealing from people like us. Sarah, I think we've uncovered the tip of an iceberg that's about to sink a lot more ships. The revelation about Phoenix Estate Solutions kept me awake all night, but it was Jake's 6 a.m. phone call that made my blood run cold. Sarah, we have a massive problem. Webb didn't just give up information about their operation, he's been feeding the FBI false details to protect something bigger. Jake's voice was tight with exhaustion and urgency. Phoenix Estate Solutions isn't just handling estates. They've been systematically targeting families going through probate proceedings. I sat up in my childhood bed, looking out at the crime scene tape still fluttering in our front yard. What do you mean? Remember how Diane researched your family before she even met your dad? That wasn't random. Webb's been accessing probate court records, identifying recently widowed people with significant assets and children from previous marriages. Then he sends in operatives like Diane to marry them and drain everything. The coffee I'd been drinking turned to acid in my stomach. How many families? Based on what I found in Webb's encrypted files? At least 37 over the past 5 years. But here's the thing that's going to make you sick, Webb's getting his targeting information from inside the court system. What do you mean, inside? Someone with access to probate filings has been feeding Webb detailed financial information about grieving families before the records become public. Names, asset values, family dynamics, even psychological profiles based on court testimony. Jake paused, and I could hear him typing frantically. Sarah, your family was selected 18 months before Diane ever accidentally met your dad at that charity auction. I thought about that night. Dad had been so proud that this elegant, sophisticated woman had shown interest in his work with legal aid families. Diane had asked such thoughtful questions about his practice, seemed so impressed by his dedication to helping others. She knew everything about us before she even said hello, I whispered. Everything. Webb's files include detailed notes about your mother's death, your trust fund structure, even your academic performance and career prospects. They calculated exactly how much they could steal before you'd become suspicious. My hands were shaking now. Jake, if there's someone in the court system feeding them information, then every family going through probate in Maricopa County has been potential targets for years. His voice turned grim. Sarah, I think we'd accidentally uncovered the largest organized fraud ring in Arizona history. Before I could respond, I heard Dad's voice from downstairs, talking to someone at the front door. My stomach dropped when I recognized Detective Rodriguez's measured tone, but she wasn't alone. Sarah? Dad called up the stairs. Can you come down? Detective Rodriguez brought some federal agents who need to speak with us. I told Jake I'd call him back and headed downstairs, where I found Dad standing with Detective Rodriguez and 2 people in dark suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a TV show. Miss Rodriguez, I'm Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI Financial Crimes Division, the woman said, extending her badge. This is Agent Martinez. We understand you've uncovered evidence related to Marcus Webb's operation? Some evidence, yes, I said carefully. Agent Chen exchanged a look with her partner. Miss Rodriguez, how familiar are you with the scope of Webb's activities beyond your stepmother's direct involvement? My heart hammered. Why do you ask? Because as of this morning, we've identified 43 potential victims across 4 states, with estimated losses exceeding $8 million. Agent Martinez pulled out a tablet, showing me a map dotted with red markers. Your case isn't just about recovering your trust fund anymore. It's become the keystone evidence in a federal racketeering investigation. Dad sank into his chair, face pale. $8 million? Mr. Matthews, we believe your wife was part of a criminal organization that has been systematically targeting bereaved families for over 5 years. Agent Chen's voice was professional but sympathetic. The evidence your daughter compiled has helped us identify patterns we've been tracking across multiple jurisdictions. I thought about Jake's discovery about the court system insider, about the 37 families, about the sophisticated targeting methods. Agents, there's something else you need to know. Agent Martinez looked up from his tablet. What kind of something else? We have evidence suggesting Webb's been getting inside information from someone with access to probate court records. The silence that followed was deafening. Agent Chen and Martinez exchanged another look, this one heavy with implications I didn't fully understand. Miss Rodriguez, Agent Chen said finally, we're going to need you to come with us to the Phoenix field office. Right now. Am I in trouble? No, Agent Martinez said, closing his tablet. But you might be in danger. The FBI field office in Phoenix buzzed with an energy I'd never experienced, agents moving between cubicles with urgent purpose while phones rang constantly in the background. Agent Chen led me to a conference room where the walls were covered with photographs, financial charts, and what looked like a massive organizational diagram with Webb's picture at the center. Sarah, what you've uncovered goes beyond even our worst estimates, Agent Chen said, settling across from me at the polished table. Webb wasn't just running a romance scam operation. He's been coordinating with corrupt court employees, financial advisors, and even funeral home directors to identify and target grieving families. Agent Martinez entered carrying a thick file. We've been investigating suspicious patterns in probate fraud for 2 years, but we could never connect the individual cases. Your evidence provided the missing links. How many people are we talking about? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. 67 confirmed victims across Arizona, California, Nevada, and Utah. Total documented theft, $12.3 million. Agent Chen opened her laptop, showing me a spreadsheet that made my stomach lurch. But because of your stepmother's detailed record-keeping and Webb's plea bargain testimony, we've recovered the location of assets hidden in offshore accounts. My heart stopped. Recovered? As of this morning, we've frozen $9.8 million in various international accounts. The recovery rate is unprecedented for this type of fraud. Agent Martinez smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from either of them. Sarah, your trust fund was the smallest amount stolen, but your investigation is going to return millions to families who thought they'd lost everything. I stared at the spreadsheet, seeing names and amounts that represented shattered families, destroyed trusts, people like Dad who'd been manipulated by professionals. What happens now? Webb's pleading guilty to federal racketeering charges in exchange for full cooperation. 25 years minimum. Agent Chen turned the laptop screen toward me. Diane's looking at 15 to 20 years, plus full restitution to all victims. And the person in the court system? Agent Martinez's expression hardened. Janet Holbrook, senior probate clerk for Maricopa County. She's been selling confidential family financial information for $2,000 per case file for 3 years. We arrested her 2 hours ago. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. A court employee, someone families trusted to help them navigate the most vulnerable period of their lives, had been selling their private information to predators. Agent Chen, when do I get my money back? Your trust fund? Full restitution within 30 days. Webb gave us the exact account numbers where your money was transferred. She paused, studying me carefully. There's something else. The other victims want to meet you. Meet me? You're the only person who caught them in the act. The only one who fought back and won. Agent Martinez pulled out a letter. This is from Patricia Williams in Tucson. Webb's operation stole her late husband's life insurance money through a fake financial advisor. She wants to thank you personally for getting her $340,000 back. I took the letter with trembling hands, thinking about Dad's devastated expression yesterday, about the 4 years I'd spent believing Diane's lies about character building. Sarah, Agent Chen said gently, what you did, documenting everything, setting up the sting operation, refusing to be victimized quietly, it's going to help rebuild dozens of families. You didn't just save yourself. You saved everyone. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, just spoke with Linda. She's planning something special for the birthday party tomorrow. Says it's time to celebrate justice instead of theft. Are you ready to come home to a family that's finally free? I looked around the conference room, at the evidence of a criminal empire that was finally crumbling, at agents who told me I was going to get my life back. For the first time in 4 years, I was ready for everything.